So I think what I want to try to talk about is when things are out of sync socially, and yeah, I'm wearing this because the humidity is real high, and I think with no end in sight to the storms, and when it shouldn't take much longer for me to have a ponytail. I really look for it. So yeah, and the glasses. Well, my eyes. I mean, how many years have I been sitting in front of a computer? And I mean, I guess, I mean, it's not all the time, but it has been a whole lot of the time the past several years. And, know, and I did work for, several years where I worked on a laptop, right, distance. So, I think about the impact on our eyes. And, well, it just made me feel better that there's children that start out at a really young age doing that. I don't think so. I think it's just a terrible thing. And I mean, that it's taking, it's just taken, I could say humanity. Should I say humanity? Should I make it that broad? Industrialized humans, it is taking a real long time to understand the harm. All right. So, well, in the World Wide Web, I mean, yeah, well, what was before that and how did that get started? And yeah, well, what I want to talk about is, when things are out of sync and when things are out of sync, I do feel a need to wear something on my head. All right. But yes, the glasses, because, I mean, well, I'm having problems with one of my eyes and having problems with one of my eyes and um this helps. So yeah, when things are out of sync, I think about what are other ways of saying that. It could sort of be people living in somewhat different worlds. um I think about, for example, the difference in me and someone with a profession and with a child or children. There's a difference, and I might care about all children, and that person might only care about his or her children. So there's a difference, and there are a lot of differences that we could talk about, cultural, social, economic. I know that through all those differences, there are always those of us who have the same concerns, and but when there are these different worlds that people are living in, you might be aware of something that you can't stop. And I talked about this the other night, and it's real uncomfortable. It's like, I can't say those aren't my children. I mean, are those my children that came out of me? Of course not. But I can't say those aren't my children and I don't care. To me, that feels wrong. So when I pick up on something, whether it's whatever form of intuition that takes, sometimes, you know, well, again, there can be such differences. I mean, I guess for someone like me, you just pray that something is going to be prevented, but I feel like I know that sometimes things can't because people are so divided. And, um, and yeah, so I feel like it's like, I think it's almost like seeing a war going on, and it's like, I'm, I'm not in that war. I'm not one of those parents. I'm not their children. I'm not, if it's something that goes on in a school or could go on in a school, I'm not a teacher, administrator, school staff. And a person could say I mean, I'm sorry for using the word war, but there is some. So perhaps I'm outside of that war, but I'm picking up on potential. But because I'm outside of that, I can't communicate to people who might be able to notice what they need to notice to stop something. So yeah, so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Just when things are kind of fragmented. So, you know, so you don't have the ability. You might have a voice and you can speak. You might be able to write. You might have friends to communicate things to, but you can't get what you need to get wherever it needs to get because of these different worlds. So what do? You know, if you are someone very sensitive, how do you manage the grief? And also, you know, because when things happen, I mean, maybe not everyone feels it. You know, I mean, some of us live with a real high level of grief. That's kind of, I've talked before about grief as a baseline emotion. So, so I guess we have to learn to manage that response. You know, I'm not letting this make my body ill. You know, I'm doing everything I can can do, and you know, so um, well, you know, what's coming to mind is the recovery thrift store that I like going to, and the reason perhaps, you know, I think about that, and I think about when a person is struggling with addiction, you know, and or a substance, or you know, I don't know, a person who has really struggled might be able to talk about that more eloquently. I just know I can't drink, and I only smoked pot socially sometimes, but you know, you know, everything. It's like no, you know, so I think about when a person has that struggle, and and you can be there. You can try to not interfere in that person's life. You can try not to interfere in that person's recovery. You can be there as a person who is not going to reject that person, but you can't fight if those are demons. You can't fight those demons for that person. I don't think so. Maybe you can help, maybe not. But is it? Can it that be a similar? Can it be not a metaphor, but kind of like, all right, there's something going on, and I mean anyone who has a loved one who struggles with addiction and where the behaviors are aggressive and things like that, you kind of know, well, there's a limit to what I can do, and that person could hurt me. Well, for those of us who are intuitive, when we pick up on things and people don't believe us, then we, you know, if we communicate to the wrong people, then we're going to potentially get hurt, at least mocked and things like that. And that's just a drain of energy. But if you think about that, all right, a drain of energy versus potential deaths, I mean, well, I'm doing everything I can. People just don't, you know, by and large in this country, people don't seem to accept. Well, here's what I will say. I think it's probably, if there's a professional class, and it's certainly not all professionals, but it's more in that realm. You know, people with money, people with status, and yeah, some people are intuitive and all that, but and you know, and it's part of their life, I guess. But you know, I don't know. It seems to be that it's really largely rejected in the professions and among status people. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about that kind of different worlds and maybe these sort of different kinds of wars that are going on. So if that is a war in the realm of education, and I don't even want to say public education formal. I mean, what is it exactly? I mean, there's economics and all that. You know, public school is mini military. You know, yeah, it's just kind of like at a certain point, do you get yourself enough out of the way and manage your grief response so that you don't get physically sick from it? Because I can speak from experience. After a child was shot and killed by another child at the school where I had taught middle school, when you know something showed up on when I had now it's a flip phone, but when I had a smartphone, you know, something showed up about a shooting at a school or middle school in Greenville. I looked. It was a school where I had taught, and within a day or two, my body was completely locked down in pain all throughout my body. You know, what I think is probably what fibromyalgia feels like. I was cold sensitive. I mean, it was physical grief. All right, so you know, I don't know what to say. Beyond that, just that you know, when we're doing everything possible to stop harm, and we can't stop it. Again, it's hard for me, you know, and and I don't know that I'm thinking about it as like the public domain, even though it's public school. It's more that it's a lot of times where that happens. All right, so it's just it's people, it's humans. But if you do want to think of it from a perspective of public, then when these things happen, it can make things. It just adds to the chaos, contributes. I mean, no matter what policy there is, it's not. I mean, there are other things that have to change too. But when you have going through public school competition being stoked and all that, then you have professionals being competitive with each other. They want their kids to be better than the other kids. They don't care about the other kids. They just want, what they want. Well, I mean, it's just a self-serving kind of thing that goes round and round. And so, yeah, again, I think about, it's real hard because I pick up on enough to know that, yeah, there's a real good chance something is going to happen. But do I know where? I don't. What I know is that based on what I've experienced before, it could be real massive. But even if it's one person, it's massive. So, yeah, have I lost a child? Nope. So who am I? Who am I to try to have any sort of credibility with people who have lost children? I mean, I can I can empathize with that loss and imagine how horrible it is. That's extreme loss. The loss of a child or children is extreme loss. But people just go on about like, yeah, it's just a person. Big deal. It's just a person. So what? Well, people matter, so I just thought I'd talk about that for a few minutes. And yeah, I think when someone is like me, it's like, is it even safe for us to retreat into what we could describe as our own world? That's kind of like, I mean, I didn't choose to be a hermit. I was abandoned and I have been rejected. And it's like, social isolation that I did not choose. I think I'm proof that humans are social because despite the fact that I've been cut off like that, I do my best. I do my best. But I think about those of us who are intuitive, who are not, um, I don't know what words to use. We're intuitive. I could say we're cultural. We might be pretty creative. There are things like that. Is it safe for us when we decide to retreat? If we decide to retreat, is that safe or are we not safe because just of the way that we are? There's a question. But anyhow, yeah. So, I mean, how old am I now? 57. So I can have grandchildren. I do have a great nephew, and and thinking about anything. I mean, thinking about harm to a child can it. I won't say it can make me extremely angry. It does, and I just sort of have to separate myself enough from even thinking about that because I can get angry thinking about it. Potentials. And I think about the child. A child is coming to mind who was injured so badly at elementary school near her that he died. And what I mean, a person shouldn't say it happens every day. We're used to it. It's okay. People can have more babies. People matter. People matter. So anyhow, yeah, different worlds. I mean, it makes me really sad. I think for those of us who are kind of social, it makes us really sad because we know that we have something to offer too, and if people don't accept that, don't like that, and they might say they do, but when they don't, well, I just don't ever want to have a cold heart. I don't want to say there's nothing I could do. I don't want to say, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be like that. But yeah, we do have to protect ourselves in some ways sometimes. And I just wanted to kind of acknowledge, I think that there are almost like these sort of different worlds. And when somebody's like, we don't want you in our world, okay, well, But I was gonna try to tell you, you're standing in the middle of the road and there's something coming real fast down the road. But when people don't want to hear it, they don't want to hear it. So yeah, I hope this helps.